Okay, so good morning. This is our third subject matter and the last one before your midterms. And I will stress to you immediately, this is probably the most important chapter in the first half. It has a lot of good material in it, particularly as we talk about traditional versus collaborative or contemporary um, purchasing or supply chain management. This is where it comes together, and that's really what it's talking about when you say integration for a competitive advantage. And we'll go into that in a little bit of detail. Um, it is very important that you read this text. It's very important that you understand the material in this text. It is probably subject matter of 50% of the midterm. It is important that you read this one and understand what the content is. And if there is any questions, I want you to please do not hesitate to ask a question. I'd rather have it cleared up now before the midterm than when you get a poor mark on your midterm and say, oh, I can't believe I got that mark. Okay, so please make sure you utilize the questions blog that is still open and will remain open if it relates to the lecture material. Okay, let me take you back to our course documents here. A couple of things is when you'll notice, you should have it on your screen now. You'll notice, like, for example, on chapter 2 here, I've added some documents and I've added them all into the same entry. So I will clean this up a bit, like take out chapter 2 for example, because it's the quiz is going to be up here. Okay, chapter 4, we're in chapter 4 now in the main textbook, chapter 3 in the abbreviated textbook, but the slides say chapter 4, and you'll notice I've added 2 additional documents here: integrated linkages and traditional versus collaborative or contemporary characteristics. Those 2 documents are actually exhibits in the textbook that I think are important, and so I've copied them, I've scanned them and put them in here for the simple reason, if you don't have a textbook, they're not in the PowerPoints, and therefore it's important that you be able to see them. So I will add some more to that. Okay, and of course after this chapter is finished, we will go to our midterms, and as I said, this is very important towards your midterm, so please look at that. Okay, study this one well. Let me go back now to PowerPoint if I can. Okay, I'm going to get started. There's about 67 slides in this deck. Most of them are pretty good. Some I'll skip over, and if I skip over them, I'll tell you I'm skipping over them where they're not that important, but you still should have a background knowledge. Okay. Again, I do not want you to memorize anything in this chapter. Just try and understand it, and if you don't understand it in general terms, give me a call and we'll discuss it further. Okay. The things on this chapter are very important. The key is integration. That is the main topic of this, and it includes both internal integration, which is inside a company, and external integration, which of course is outside of the company, such as suppliers or government or customs, etc., etc. It will also explore more deeply the critical role of cross-functional sourcing teams. This is a very, very large subject matter. If it's done properly, it can be of significant benefit to an organization, and how you develop products and how you run your manufacturing floors, or whether you provide the excellent service to your customer. It is very easy to say, it's very easy to depict what a cross-functional team is. What it doesn't do very well is take away, and it takes away the silos, but it's very difficult to maintain because you have multiple personalities. So we will explore that as we go forward. Okay, and then we'll talk about some of the supply management risks. But it's very important that you recognize cross-functional sourcing. Again, major subject for your midterm because there's a lot of material on it. All right, let's move forward, and we'll talk about supply integration is defined, and that really is, professionally managing your suppliers and developing close working relationship with different internal groups. Okay, and I know that a supplier is outside the company, and in 90%, 95% of the time, it remains outside the company. In some rare cases, customers such as Honda and Toyota will invite a supplier to participate internally, which means come in-house to work on design concepts or major problem solving issues. But primarily they're still an outside company now with an internal link. They're not the same as an internal division, because there's a lot of information that must remain confidential, and to that, and we'll address that as we go forward. But what it does mean, I want you to think about, and I don't know about, let me try to see if I can give you my image. My camera's not working very well. It's working for me, but not for you. Let me see if I can. If I can change my window. I've changed the window whereby you should be able to see my internal office now. You should be able to see me, only because when I want you if you can't see me, then what I want you to think about is, if you take your two hands and you integrate your fingers, you put your fingers together and tighten them up into a double fist, you'll notice the strength of that integration. If you squeeze your fingers together, it's very difficult to break that bond. That is the image I want you to have of integration, such as this. It is a strong bond that is difficult to break if it's done properly. This is not integration. This is integration. All right, and I want you to think that's what we're trying to do when we integrate our suppliers or external departments to our internal departments. And we'll go back to a PowerPoint slide now. This just takes a little bit of more finesse. Okay, so that integration is critical for you. Some of the elements that are of supply integration is people coming together to work on a common problem. The definition is common. That's the important thing, is you're not bringing people together to work on 10 separate problems, or they're not together, they're working independently, but as a common problem or a common design or a common project, you are now bringing potentially a supplier in to have more of a voice or more of a say on what is happening there. Okay, by bringing different people into the integration, by using integration, you create the 360-degree viewpoint, the QCDD. We've talked about that before. I'll talk about it for the next 6 months with you. The QCDD represents those different people bringing different viewpoints into a discussion. Quality, manufacturing, engineering, sales and marketing, purchasing, supply chain, accounting, we all have a different view of the similar or same issue or same problems. Okay, when those four main ones being QCDD is the four primary ones, they're not the only ones. You can add accounting in there sometimes as you need them. You can add in sales and marketing as you need them. But essentially your four principal players should come from manufacturing or service, whoever's making the service or doing the service. Engineering, who supports and develops a lot of the products. Purchasing and supply chain, who control the supply chain. And of course the delivery partners, meaning your warehousing and people in your supply chain who deliver for you. It is important that those people get a voice, whether it be electronically, just like this. Right now we have got a collaboration, an internal collaboration. If I consider myself internal, I'm the only one here. The other 13 members of the class are external, but we are collaborating through electronic means. Okay, in many cases this simulates what will happen in the real life, because your supplier could be based in China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Germany, or any place else in the world, depending on the skill of that supplier and what you've selected. Okay, the thing you struggle there with, of course, is time zones. China is a nice time zone for me because I know it very well, because my Chinese family is there. but they're 12 hours ahead of us, which means that when we want to have a 10 a.m. meeting here in Canada, it is a 10 p.m. meeting for them in China. So we always have to be cognizant of the global clock, that where are we and what do we do. So in many cases, I try to schedule my international meetings late in my afternoon, early in my afternoon, early in my morning if I'm talking to Europe, because they are in their afternoon. But if I'm talking to China, I try to schedule my time, my conference calls with China around 7 or 8 p.m. Canadian time, which makes it 7 or 8 a.m. in China time. So it is important that you remember that as you go forward, because as a team leader, it is your responsibility to accommodate your team members, not the responsibility of the team members to accommodate the team leader. Okay? All right. The other thing we need to have a basic understanding of is we need to develop an understanding of what the end goal is. We need to know what the end game is so that we can focus our energies to get there. It's a very difficult and very disappointing situation when you think you've got tickets to a big game and you believe that the game is going to be in downtown Toronto, but you realize it's been changed to Montreal, and you get down to Toronto and you realize there's no game, it's actually in Montreal. So important to understand the end game. And again, this is probably the most difficult part of a cross-functional team, because everybody has a different agenda, everybody has a different viewpoint, they've got different activities that you have to coordinate together, but at the end of the day, you're working on the same thing to get the same result, and we all need to know what that end result or the expectation is. Okay, you're going to have to rely on relationship management skills, and I won't spend a lot of time on this. Your textbook talks about big R and little r. Read through the relationship skills, but I think that the next couple of slides here are probably enough for you to know about, and you don't need to study so deeply on it. But relationship management skills, and you bring in 5 people, 6 people into a conference room, either physically or electronically, and you have to be able to manage those relationships. So we need the ability to act ethically, meaning we have to be above board and display to our partners, including our supplier if they happen to be in this cross-functional team, is the truth and the real situation as you go forward. By hiding things or not explaining things properly or thinking that accounting doesn't need that information is not the way to do. Think ethically in the sense and act ethically, meaning do everything above board. I've explained to you before that purchasing supply chain managers must be as pure as they can, as white as they can, meaning pure and unblemished as it comes to ethics. As agents of your company, unethical behavior is a termination offense in our case, and there's also a legal situation that should we act unethically as purchasing, you are and can be held responsible for your actions in a court of law, okay, because you're an agent of the company. Okay, we need to listen effectively. Listen effectively means it is very common, and I'll give you 2 cultural things here. Because of my experience with Japanese, their culture, as someone starts to speak, no one ever interrupts them until the person finishes speaking. And then there's a pregnant pause, a 10-second pause, when then they'll start to ask the questions. As opposed to North American style, including my style, which is really not a great style to have, but it is what we do, is we interact constantly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in a conversation mode, even when someone is presenting. Now you're very kind to me because the 13 students in the class are of course listening and not jumping in to change what I'm saying or question what I'm saying at this point. But in a meeting room, you have 10 different people talking in 10 different directions. It is our job to try to listen effectively, that you have one speaker at one time, and let them finish so that we can understand, then we can ask the questions. Okay, the ability to communicate with the people in the room or online is easy because you're here and we can communicate directly with you, but the other 7 students who are not here, 8 students who are not here, how do we communicate with them? And of course, we try to record this lecture so they can get it, and we're getting better. We will get better at that. But essentially, if we don't try to help communicate with them, they'll never know this actually happened and never know some of the side discussions that we have. Okay, so it's important we find a way to communicate with those people not involved in the direct cross-functional team or meeting where you may be, but with those people outside who should know. So maybe following a meeting, you make a quick brief summary of the discussion and you send it to people who should know but not necessarily should be in a meeting. A good example of that is your boss. Whoever your boss is, maybe you should keep them up to date with the happenings or the goings on of that discussion. So therefore, you do have to give the communication to other people who are not directly in the meeting. Okay, and you want to use these skills to be creative problem solving. The word creative and problem solving, they could be separate. I want you to be creative and I want you to solve problems. But again, if I'm solving a problem and I use the same concept of a cross-functional team or a multi-relationship team, each person who's involved in that can bring a different viewpoint. And with different viewpoints, it gives you to see the problem from different angles, and therefore you have a better opportunity to resolve the problem for all involved, as opposed to I can solve the problem from my viewpoint and it helps me, but it hinders accounting. So it's important to do that. And when you have this type of relationship, you drive relationships, meaning, and the drive relationships means you make them good and you build yourself a network of contacts that allows you to go to them when you have a problem or an issue and say, you know, Izzy, can you help me with this? I understand and we've worked together before, but this is my problem. Can you give me some suggestions how I might help it? Most people, when we create a relationship, if it's a good relationship, will help us. The inverse is true also. If I have a bad relationship with someone, and I don't like them and they know I don't like them and I fight with them constantly, it's very difficult for me to go to that person a week from now and say, I know I pissed you off, I know we don't get along, I know I don't like you, but can you help me? The answer is probably going to be maybe or most likely no. They won't tell you that, but they've no intention of doing it. So it's important that you build the emotional content with your colleagues, your suppliers, etc., but keep it on that ethical, high professional level. So again, as we normally do, if there's a question, please just shout out and blurt out. I actually can see the connection now on the second screen. So just shout out and stop me and ask for clarification, please. Okay. Your relation inputs come from the market. You know, the market tells you what's out there, what the plans in marketing is, and what the plans and the requirements of the marketplace is. And the marketing people are now probably, as much as purchasing is taking a very significant role in companies, so is marketing. The general public, the customers and the consumers out there are changing their mind constantly on what they expect, what they want. And we see that in the telecom industry. The fact that suppliers, Samsung and Apple and the other, Huawei, the other companies are constantly issuing upgrades, constantly issuing next levels, because the technology is changing so rapidly that you as a customer want all those bells and whistles in your phone. If you don't, then suddenly you die. And you die, and we've seen a whole bunch of cell phone companies die or realize they don't want to be in the manufacturing business of cell phones, but they're going to do other things. And your prime example is BlackBerry. 5 years ago, BlackBerry was the #1 phone, including Apple, in the industry, in business industry, in government. Everybody carried a BlackBerry. Everybody that was anything, any company that was significant carried BlackBerries. Why? Because at that point they were ahead of the curve, but they didn't keep up and did not keep pace with the developments of it, and they fell behind. They eventually lost significant market share where they could realize, I can't sell phones anymore. What can I do? And they changed the image of the company and the activity of the company to be a developer of software and phone integration, etc. and they're doing very, very well as a result of that now. But they were close to bankruptcy when they realized I can't keep up with the likes of, Samsung and Apple. Therefore, they elected to step away from the manufacturing and selling of phones to work on the background systems. And the new president, of course, has done a very good job of that. Okay, so marketing is becoming very important to feed to a company what the customer, the end customer, really wants. Okay, and when I take this back to marketing, every time that a car company issues a new model, and remember, and you probably don't know, but a model car, a car model lasts about 5 years. A truck or a minivan lasts about 6 to 7 years before it needs a full redesign, a major change. And in the middle of that 5-year period is what they call a minor model change, which changes some of the external physical features to make the car a little bit different than it was for the first 2 years. Because again, people's tastes are changing, and they found things out in the first couple of years of the life of that car that we need to fix or better or improve, and therefore we do a mid-model change. Marketing is critical to that because they are the voice of the customer. They are telling us as designers, this is what my customer likes and what they don't like about this model. Therefore, take the feature out because no one likes it. Not so long ago, the number one complaint from the general public in cars was the cup holder. Believe it or not, the coffee cup holder up until about 5 years ago was the number one issue in cars because everybody had trouble with the cup holder. It was too big, it was too small. The BMW and General Motors use an opening grip whereby you could the cup holder would open to take larger cups, etc. Except the downside to it was when you put in a super big gulp in it, it would stretch the fingers of that grip so wide that they wouldn't come back in again as quickly as they should, and somebody forgets about it and tries to put a coffee cup in it, and before they know it, the coffee cup falls through, hits the floor, and goes all over your shoes and your feet and burns your leg. So that used to be the biggest problem. Now it's different things like connectivity and different things. But the important thing is our marketing people told us you got to fix this, you have to fix that. People don't like the way that Honda puts their switch for the sunroof on the dashboard as opposed to up on the ceiling of the car where naturally it should be. And now Honda, of course, has done that like everyone else has. But it took Honda a long time to get their head around that because in Japan they like it on the dashboard. So marketing is important for us because they tell us what your customer thinks, and you should listen to that. Not necessarily react to it all the time, because some customers are just never happy, and even though they buy your product every week. But you have to be able to say what can I fix and what makes sense to fix. And when you go to fix those problems, you want to use that cross-functional team to do that. Okay. Some of the business advantages. The business. Anytime you talk business advantages, it has to be favorable cost structures. The relationship, everything comes back to the bottom line, which is called profit. And I've told you before, profit is not a bad word. It is a good word, and it is the language of your CEO or your president. He has to talk to his board members always on share value and profit, costs and profit, business plan and profit. Because at the end of the day, profit is the only thing that moves your company forward. You need profit to stay in business. You need profit to develop new products. You need profit to be able to invest in the future. You need profit to pay your people well. So it's not a bad word. But anytime you talk about any advantage, you have to think, is it a cost advantage to me? Does it help my cost structure? Not price, my cost structure, etc. Also thinking about the economies of scale. If we can combine multiple parts of multiple customers, or anytime we can increase the volume with a supplier, we then increase our influence on them, and the more money that you spend with them, whether it be on multiple products, the more money you spend with them, the more control you have of getting a significant cost reduction. Okay. and from a different perspective every time that we use a cross-functional team. And again, this is the crux of this discussion. The integration says that when you involve different people from different departments, you get fresh eyes. If I ask my accounting department to help me solve a purchasing problem, I will get a completely different viewpoint than I see, because I am used to what I do and I do it very well. But sometimes accounting can look at that and say, why do you do that? Because that doesn't make sense, Jim. Have you ever thought about doing it this way? Poof! A fresh idea pops out that says, actually, yeah, it is better. That's the difference. And when I gave you your assignment, and I'll go back and talk before we finish today, I will talk about your tiny assignment, which is not worth 15%, by the way. It's just part of your discussion board on Amazon. But the word I want you to use is in the Amazon discussion. I asked you to also give me some good ideas as to whether or not you can see some opportunities. A discussion board creates a synergetic opportunity whereby one of you make a comment and the other 2 or 3 students involve themselves in that comment and ask questions or clarifications or add to it, and you can see at the end of the day the discussion, which starts as a fairly simple 1-paragraph comment, could have 6 or 7 or 10 different viewpoints in discussions. And that's what I want you to do with your discussion board. I want you to create synergy, which means when someone makes the initial comment, I would like the other students to interact and say, I agree, I disagree, I think you're correct, but I would add this, this, and this. And that is why when I mark your discussion boards, you get the same mark for that you make a comment, you make the initial comment, or when you reply to a comment or you interact with them. To me, they're the same value. There's 2 ways to get marks. One is make the comment in the first place, make your submission. Second one is to challenge the submission, support the submission, make it stronger, ask constructive questions. The more you do that, the higher mark you get in your discussion board. And now we're in our second major discussion board. I think based on this one, this will tell me where we are going, and I will start to become more stricter in your marking. That says if I don't see that interaction back and forth, you'll be getting 5 and 6s on your discussion board marks as opposed to 9s and 10s, because as we get better at this, we expect more, and by the end of the semester, I expect the discussion boards to have significant number of comments. Now, we had about 70 comments on the first discussion board on traditional versus collaborative. That's including my comments back to you, etc. I think so. So about 70, no, I think 70 comments came from the students. So there was a lot of activity, and I'm very pleased with that. Let's see what happens with the Amazon one, because that has got as much opportunity for discussion as the previous one did. So it's important that you participate, because you're starting to form the concept of synergy. And believe me, synergetic thinking will take a simple idea, and within 1/2 hour of discussion, or just even sharing it with somebody in the cafeteria, sit down at the lunch table and say, you know, I've got a strange idea, I've got this quirky idea, I thought maybe, what do you think of this? And as soon as you say to someone, what do you think of this, or can I have your opinion, first of all, you're paying them a significant amount of respect by asking their opinion. And they feel that respect, and the first thought that goes through your mind goes, oh, my boss is asking me to help him? Wow, sure, I can do that. It's important for you, as opposed to if I don't like the person, my first comment might be, what the hell does this person want? So please, when you think about relationships, work them very, very well. Work them hard. A person that's outgoing or extroverted has an easier time building relationships than someone who is shy or introverted. But I can't change someone's personality, and those people who are not comfortable building relationships, if you want to succeed in business, or exceed more than you are in business, then you need to build relationships. So it is important that you build relationships, and good relationships, and avoid creating bad relationships or poisonous or cancerous relationships, because they just defeat everything you do. they work in the background and they cut your feet out from underneath you. So work on positivity, work at being a supportive member of a team, or if you're not, offer your suggestions anyway, but keep things positive. It's okay to say, have you thought about this potential negative? That's okay, as long as everything you say is not negative, because ultimately negative people do not get invited to join the synergetic teams and cross-functional teams because you just don't put a good input into it. So that's very important. I want you to etch the word synergy in your heart, because it is such a good, strong way of building your career and building your capability. You're using other people's strength to match your strength. And the old saying is, 2 heads are better than 1. Absolutely, 2 heads are better than 1, and 4 is better than 2. However, there is a maximum where cross collaboration comes into effect. When you get to 6, 7, 10 people, it's very difficult. It's very difficult because it now becomes a complete everybody talking at the same time. So think about that if you can. Okay. Any questions at this point?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, Simon. Fire away.
The discussion board and the that little assignment to do.
Yes. Let me go to course documents. Okay. The discussion board. So in your discussion board, let me just open it up. Okay, in your discussion board, you've got your impression. The first part here is give me your impression and your comments about your Amazon plant tour. And the 3 people who did not attend, I emailed them independently. There's 3 students that couldn't attend. One, Thaz, who I don't think is in the class this morning, but he wasn't there, and he came back and says, can I answer this blog from the viewpoint, I used to work for Amazon, therefore as an internal person I know other things. Absolutely, he can do that. But this is a general conversation. But inside here, there's you'll see 10 marks for your comments, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And down below there's another 10 mark thing that says all students are required to create a document in whatever format you feel comfortable, Excel, Visio, Word, that shows me a supply chain. This is a mini assignment internal to this discussion board, and the details of this assignment appear in your assignments here. I think this assignment here. Now you'll also notice there is no value put on this. This is not a 15% assignment, guys. This is just a little mini sideline, and there's no value on that other than it's part of the 10 marks. So I'm going to give 20 marks for this, up to 20 marks for this discussion board, of which 10 of them is associated to my requirement of saying create for me a supply chain. There's no right and wrong supply chain. There's no perfect answer.
Professor, I have a
What I
question.
want you to think about, a good mark in this is think creatively about what does this supply chain look like. And the difference, if someone says here's 3 blocks in my supply chain, I'm done, that's worth about 2 marks to me. Someone puts
Sir, I
some
have a question.
meat behind the bones and adds some thought to it, I'm okay with that, because I don't know what the Amazon supply chain is. Honestly, I have a good idea, but I don't know. So therefore, this is where you can be a little bit creative, and you can be extensive, detailed, or you can be summary. A summary tends not to get the same marks because then I have to read behind your mind, and I can't do that. So,
Question, Professor.
okay.
Actually, I emailed you this assignment. I don't know if I really had no idea how to do it, so I just made something up and I emailed you. Like, I would love to know your view on it, like if it's something that you expected.
Okay, what I'll do there is I didn't look at it because I was looking at quizzes last night as marking quizzes. I seen you responded immediately to it. Let me look at that. And again, and by the way, just if I can see something in advance, such as an early submission, if it's not right, it gives me an idea, or not right, maybe it can be done better. I'll feed back to you and give you a chance to correct it. Because one thing is, it's great to get them early, but if you cut some time off of what you're doing, just because it's convenient. I'll try to help you make it better. So let me look at that as, feedback to you, what it is, and that'll give me a good idea what the students are thinking also. But go back into your chapter 2. All of you, go into your chapter 2. Yep.
I don't think you heard me when I asked my question. I'm not sure if my mic was working. When is it due, though, the discussion board and the assignment?
I think it says discussion board is due October 6th at 5 p.m., I think. Sunday at 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and again, you should see that in there, I hope. And again, I'll go back and, I think it's October 5th, 6th, Sunday at 5 p.m. Okay? All right, and Izzy, I'll look at yours and see what I've got. But again, the chapter 2 has got a very simple example of a box of cereal supply chain. It's a very simple one. We talked about, in this class actually, we'll talk about also black box suppliers, white box suppliers, grey box suppliers. But we talked previously about suppliers fall into tiers. The customer is often called the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer. An Apple or a Samsung, for example, is an OEM. Okay. The suppliers who directly supply parts to them are called Tier 1 suppliers. The suppliers who supply parts to the Tier 1 suppliers are called Tier 2 suppliers. And the suppliers who supply parts to the Tier 2 suppliers are called Tier 3. So as you go deeper into the supply base, the suppliers usually get smaller and more numerous than you do where there's very few OEMs. And if you look at car companies, there's only 10 major companies. There may be 28 companies out there, but there's only 10 major companies. And then, so it's a small triangle, and then they have got 1,000 suppliers each, which becomes a bigger part of the triangle. And those suppliers, Tier 1 suppliers, have got 1,000 suppliers each also, which means there's 10,000 suppliers in the next level. So as you look at a triangle, the bottom half is going to be Tier 2, then a smaller group of Tier 1s, and then the OEMs are smaller at the top. So in your example of Amazon, you have to imagine the suppliers have got tiers. Not tears coming out their eyes, but tiers, Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So make up your supply, your as much detail as you can imagine. And if you don't know something and you want to think it should be there, it may be completely correct, guys. But look at the example on the cereal box, because that gives you the image, and there's a couple of important pieces of information there you need to include. Okay? Okay, Lily. You can't see the PowerPoint now. Laura, if you can't see the PowerPoint, does anybody else see the PowerPoint?
I don't see it.
Okay, thank you. You better tell me that. Okay, let me go back. Let me go back and... Okay, no, that's not it. Well, you couldn't see the PowerPoint because we're actually in a Blackboard. Okay, let me go back and... You should see the PowerPoint now. Do you see the PowerPoint?
I do.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right. That's because we were in Blackboard initially. Okay, so knowing that, so when you start to, let's go back to this. So inputs is, again, think about your synergy, think about that, but build strong, positive relationships. Okay. How to achieve integration? Remember, integration is your fingers coming together and locking tightly. You can imagine trying to hold someone who's fallen over a cliff by their hand, and you're going to squeeze their hand as much as you can to make it as strong as you can. All right, that is integration. Is that joining that, although they're not physically connected to the same body, they are working hand in hand together. Cross-functional teams is a primary method of doing that. Okay, and we've talked about that a little bit length, and we'll talk more about it. But as you as a purchaser, as a buyer, as a manager, can create that cross-functional team. But usually it's created by the upper echelon of your company, your executives who create the functional team, because this is an important project for our company. We need it to be successful. Therefore, I'm putting together a team of people that I think can deliver the goods. And that's important because it's people that I think can deliver the goods, which tell me that, and should tell you, that not everyone in the company gets to play on the cross-functional teams. Only highly regarded employees get to play on the cross-functional teams. Or if I want to develop an employee who I think has got great potential, I'll put them on a cross-functional team. Because again, when we talk about strong people, there's 15 to 20% of a company is strong leadership capability. Those people excel at their job. Another 60 to 80% or 70% are strong contributors that do a very good job every day, and there's 10% at the bottom are non-contributing, and they are non-contributing and they still have a job in some cases. But if I was to pick a team and I've got A-class players, B-class players and C-class players, would you put a team in the competition filled with C-class players, or would you rather put in a team filled with A and B-class players? Of course, the answer is A and B players. So cross-functional teams, the reason I tell you this is when your boss asks for a volunteer in the future, I need someone to do a project for me, you want to make sure your hand is the first one up that says, I can do it. Doesn't matter if you can or not. It doesn't matter if you have the time or not. You got to tell them, I'm interested in this project. Because first of all, it shows a leadership capability. It shows that you are willing to stick your neck out, willing to say, I can do this. If my boss gives me a project and I realize it's a lot of work to it, I have every right to go back to him and say, this is a lot of work. I can't do this justice. I cannot do this properly with the workload I've got. Can we look at taking some of this workload away, or maybe taking a weekly report, making a monthly report, find a way to reduce my workload so that I can put the proper time necessary on this project. First of all, your boss will thank you for being honest, because he doesn't always realize what your workload is, and she will try to offload some of the non-essential items of your job, and we all have non-essential items, to give you time to do this project. In some cases, it will take you right out of your job and make it a permanent position for the next 2 years. So it's important that you, when someone asks for a volunteer, or I need someone to work on a project for me, it is one of your best opportunities that you have to leave a lasting impression with your boss or with the senior management team, which will then dictate your promotional capability in the future. So it's very important to do that. You do it with cross-functional teams, and you do it with information systems. SAP, for example, and you all know SAP, or you've heard of SAP, is a multi-faceted, heavy, demanding internal system, integrated system that connects a whole bunch of people together with the same information. It's important that you have that if you're sharing information. But you can also have it without it, because anything you do electronically, you have to be able to do manually. So in the event that your system crashed, you still have to do the job. All right. So it's important that you do that. You need, in order to achieve integration, you have to have the same performance objectives and measurements. The team members have to be working for the same goal, and that goal should be part of their objectives, so that if one of them fail, they all fail. If the project is highly successful, they're all highly successful, with a certain degree of fluctuation. Okay, but keep in mind that it's important that the team clearly defines, and usually when you create a cross-functional team, the big question is, what are we here for? What are we trying to do? What do we need to accomplish? And when we decide as a team what that is, I'm going to go back to the person who gave me the job, assuming I'm the team leader. I'm going to go back to the person who gave me the job and say, after a couple of discussions we've had with the group, this is what we believe, this is what you're looking for. He or she will confirm that's what I'm looking for, because what that confirmation is important, because I don't want to go down the path for 6 months and realize I'm on the wrong path. And 6 months later, my boss says, I didn't ask you to do this, I asked you to do something else. So it's important to clarify, to summarize, and go back and confirm. Okay. Process-focused organizations is when a process, you're looking at making the process successful, whether or not it's an engineering process or whether it's a purchasing process. So we want to make sure our processes are good and strong. Okay. co-location of suppliers and customers. Customers don't co-locate. First of all, again, the academic here have joined suppliers and customers to say co-location of suppliers and customers is correct. It means that as a customer, I can invite a supplier into my house to work inside my house with my engineers to redesign a process. Okay. And one of the questions that came in the last blog, last discussion board was confidentiality, that suppliers have to be willing to waive confidentiality because you're working together. In Honda and Toyota's case, we have common suppliers sitting at the table who are actually competitors to each other, but not making the same part. They'll be making a different part. But there's always hold on a second, Izzy. Oh, hold on. I just lost myself there. What's important is when your suppliers co-locate suppliers inside your customer, it's important that you maintain the confidentiality of that supplier, pricing, engineering know-how, secrets or confidential processes that they have. You cannot share that with people. So there's a very thin line to walk on when I put two suppliers who are actually competitors in the same room together. I expect them to work together, and I will tell them that you will work together and I'll work with you, but I will not violate each of your confidentialities. So in some cases, I'm going to have discussions with this supplier and discussions with that supplier, because first of all, you're on different parts or different processes, but you have to maintain confidentiality. Okay. All right. Can everyone still see the PowerPoint? Just let me make sure. Okay, you should be able to see it. Very important that you do that. If you're going to locate suppliers, and this is not a normal thing, it's very difficult to co-locate suppliers, but they do work inside Honda, do work inside Toyota. Buyers and supplier councils, yeah, they're buyer councils whereby we talk to, and a council just is a commonality of buyers from different organizations working collaboratively together. Supplier council is the same thing. Suppliers can make a council and they can get together. Okay. What is most common inside TQM is, and Mary will mention this, I think, is when you take your quality course, and is there is what they call a supplier quality council, whereby we work together with the suppliers to improve the quality. So the council is just another word for another cross-functional team or council. Okay. The steering committee is very significant because that is your senior management committee who have given the project to everyone else. So they've defined the project. We want to develop a new cell phone to compete with Apple. Therefore, I'm going to put together a cross-functional team to look at some ideas and what features we need. Okay? And the purpose of the steering committee is your president will say to the 5 directors, you know, we're going to have this, we need to do this, I want to create a cross-functional team to do this, and by the way, John, you are the director of engineering, you're going to be the team's champion. You're going to be their mentor and their champion. And the purpose of John then to the steering committee is whenever I have a problem that I can't resolve at my level, I can go to my steering committee member who's the champion and say, I need your help. The senior vice president of finance is preventing us doing something because blah 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 blah. Can you look in to see if it can be fixed? Sometimes you need to deal above your level in an organization, and sometimes a mentor or a defined steering committee member is a way to do that. Okay, so that's what you want to think about a steering committee. Use them to your advantage. They're not a hindrance. They are there to help you. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back for a second, talking linkages. When we'll talk linkages, and I'll show you. So many linkages most consists of many communication flows back and forth. And the more people you include, the more that your communication flows exponentially. Okay? Now your emails from 7 different places, going 7 different places to everyone else, and everybody else is trying to keep their boss and their organization up to date. So it becomes increasing exponentially. It does not mean that you have to consistently communicate with all these people who are somewhat connected. You communicate to your team, then it's up to your team member inside engineering to communicate with engineering. Okay? All right, you obviously need to reach agreements, and in a lot of cases, your global outsourcing is difficult. When global outsourcing happens, it becomes very difficult, and it becomes controversial, and it becomes painful for some people because you're actually affecting the people inside your company. But in some cases, you have to think globally, and it's not just for supply. I could use design. I have a design engineer in-house, but maybe I want to use a design source in China. Okay, so I may actually do that. So your internal department feels slighted that we went outside, but usually that's a company decision, not my decision. All right. Operationally, operations being primarily refers to manufacturing facilities or warehousing, but it also can be sales and marketing, and it can also be services if I'm providing a service. IBM, for example, provides a service. Apple have got products and to sell, and they provide a service in their system side. Okay, so it's easy for operations to have close relationships, and they should have close relationships with the quality department, with the purchase department, with the material handling department, with their warehousing department. People who touch them directly will they have a closer relationship with, but may not have a closer relationship with marketing, because their job is to manufacture or to produce the service that the marketing people require, and it's done through other, and they're now making it. But once marketing defines what the service is or the product should be, they step away from it, and engineering, purchasing, and manufacturing work together to make that work. Okay. In some cases, we're going to have a global operating strategy. Every company has a global strategy. There are 2 or 3 items that they want to accomplish globally, meaning in every company, every division, no matter where they are. Honda's #1 strategy is beat Toyota. Simple. We're going to beat Toyota. That's what we do every year, and we don't beat them, by the way, but we have that objective in mind as we go forward. Okay. You'll need a sales and operating plan. Okay. All right. So there's things that you need to do, and you need to document and say, this is what we're trying to accomplish. I want to make 10,000 units a day. Amazon had if you go back to your Amazon tour, one of their flags of banners that hung outside their in the main lobby was 1 million shipments, achieved 1 million shipments per day. So that was a big thing for them. Obviously, when they hang a banner that says to the people every day come walk in, we have achieved at least once, if not multiple times, to be able to ship 1 million packages in a day. But probably most days they don't, or some days they don't. But it was important for them to know what they did. Okay, and when you see that, then everyone knows our goal is to ship 1 million packages a day, if there is 1 million to ship. But that's what they're trying to do. Okay, quality assurance is increasing. It says, this slide says increasing in importance. It is, for the last 25 years, been hugely important, primarily because the North American industry is not at the same level as the Japanese suppliers. They are closer today than they were before, very close in some cases, but they are not at the same level of quality as the Japanese. The Japanese continue to be the #1 quality manufacturer of vehicles, led by Toyota, Honda, and Nissan. General Motors sucks a hind tit about 10th or 11th place. And the reason, simply, even from a BMW viewpoint, the Toyota Lexus, the Lexus is Toyota, the Lexus car has been the #1 car in the automotive market for the last 6 years, unequivocally, regardless of price point. It is the best made car. So even though you may pay more money for a Mercedes-Benz, or you may pay more money for a BMW, the quality of that car based on the JD Power quality standards is not as good as Lexus. You may pay more money, it may be more luxurious, it may have more features, but the quality is not better than a Lexus. But the features are better. Okay, so make sure you know that. And then given the percentage of outsourced materials, 60 to 80% outsource quality assurance, and the word assurance says they are assuring the quality. Okay, now here's a little tip for you, because you're on lecture. The ones that are not here won't get this. Is that when I ask you to define quality assurance, you just have to remember to reverse the description to give you a start. So if I asked you all to define for me quality assurance, you'd come up with some answer. And really the answer is quality assurance is the assurance of quality. So as soon as I say the assurance of quality, it then allows me to say quality assurance is making sure that the quality is the right quality for the right part as defined by the product. So sometimes I'm asking for the definition, just reverse it. So quality assurance, if I think of assurance of quality, it can give me a better answer. Okay, but given quality assurance means the checking of quality. So the checking of quality comes in different parts, and that's a different discussion in I think in OPM. I think OPM, maybe quality. I can't remember whether it's this semester or next semester. There will be a chapter on that. You can check the incoming quality on the dock. You can do a sampling of the products that are there, and if you check 10 parts and the 10 parts are correct, the assumption is the 100 parts in the box are correct. You cannot check every part. Inspection is a bad word. It is unless it's defined as part of your process. Inspection says that you have to check goods after you made them because there's something wrong with them, and that's a waste of money. Okay, it's not a quality concept. It's a bad thing. But you can do incoming check. You can do checks on the line when the parts are come to the line to be manufactured. Person can pick up and say, I'm looking for part number 1, 2, 3, 4. Check, it says 1, 2, 3, 4. It is the right part. I can put it on the car. If 1, 2, 3, 5 comes to your table instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, there's an opportunity for the employee or the associate to correct that, okay, to find it. So you need to be able to do quality training and development, and not just your quality engineers, but your technical engineers, your purchasing people, your manufacturing people, your operators, your people in the warehouse, your truck drivers should all get quality training and development, because all of them that touch your part or service can damage it, break it, lose it, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't get to your customer, then you're going to be wrong no matter what you do. So the more that you can educate people in quality systems, quality training, the better off you are. Okay. Process capabilities, this is a quality function. They will do process capability studies with a supplier and his manufacturing process. A high probability study with a high result says there's less chance of making an error. A low probability score or a high probability score is going to mean there's a high chance of them making a mistake, but a low probability score says there's a very little chance the supplier can make a mistake, and therefore you don't need to inspect as much. Okay. Corrective action planning, joint again, collaboratively with multiple QCDD focuses. That's how it should be done. Okay. Engineering, talk about engineering, and let me go back to the document I'm going to show you next. Let me see if I can do this. Yes. Just bear with me a second here. Hold on, Sir Hill. No, I can't get it. Can you see a document with a big X on it? It's called Exhibit 4.1. It talks about. Hold on. No, there's an exhibit in your textbook. Let me go back to PowerPoint. I'll come back to you in a second, Sir Hill. Sir Hill, what can I do for you? Sir Hill. Suhail came in and left again. That's why. Okay. All right. So engineering. Any questions, anybody, before we go on? We've got to watch your time. We've got half an hour left. I'm going to try and cover. There's about 68 slides in here. We're not going to cover them all. But engineering is the most important and challenging linkages. They do joint product development, process development activities. You've got product engineers and you've got process engineers. They are separate and distinct, but they do work together inside engineering. But people are product designers and other ones are process designers. They are two different disciplines, usually interchangeable, but definitely separate in a company. Co-opting engineers to work in your supply chain management. Honda does this all the time. If a supplier has a problem, we send our engineers, our process engineer, to the supplier to help them at no cost to the supplier, because if we can help them get better, then we ultimately will reduce our costs and we'll get better. Whereas if a GM sends an engineer to the supplier, they're charging you for every minute of his time and at a significant cost, because they shouldn't have to help you. Honda, Toyota, and the contemporary companies are willing to do that because it helps them in the long run. Okay, they're always looking for new technologies and always want to apply new technologies, whether it makes economic sense or not. It's your job, or the cross-functional team job, to make sure it makes economical sense to apply a technology that is new. And there's a risk when you do new technologies. Sometimes I often tell people, I don't want to be an alpha site or the beta test site. I don't want to be the test guinea pig. I'd rather be the second guy to the market with a new idea, providing I can improve on the first idea. But there's risk when you do that. Okay, and there's always going to be ongoing and direct communication with your supplier, with purchasing, with the manufacturing floor. Accounting and finance. The only thing I want to tell you here is most accounting stuff is electronic. It's mostly invoice related, but the one thing they can do for you is they put controls in place for inbound materials, for checking inventory status, for confirming inventory status, and when sometimes you'll ask them to do a spend analysis. Where did I spend all my money? And they can tell you, in this commodity you spent 70% of your dollars with supplier A, 30% of your dollars with supplier B. So they have a very good activity for you. And it's important that you listen to your accountants. Okay, marketing, sales, we've talked about them. Legal, contractual issues. These are just peripheral groups. If you need them, you go look at them, you talk to them. But the thing that you need to know is patent ownership. Is when somebody has a copyright or a patent on a part, it is your job in purchasing to make sure you ask the question of the supplier: are you using any patented or copyright information in your process? Because if you do, then I want to make sure that you have the right to use it. Because if my supplier violates patent law and he uses a patent of someone else, then and he is found to be doing that, of course, patent infringement is a significant lawsuit, and the law will recognize the patent holder, and some of the sales generated by that patent with the supplier using it illegally will be then given to the patent maker, and the supplier will be charged with patent infringement, and they could have serious issues there. Sometimes your legal people are very important for you: terms and conditions, contract laws, some issues with suppliers that are not performing well. You may use your lawyer. I try to keep my legal people out of my discussions completely until I have to, until I know it's a legal issue. They just see things from a completely different viewpoint and are always trying to slow things down because lawyers take a lot of time, because they get paid more money when they take a lot of time. Okay, be careful with legal. Use them when you have to, but try not to be involved in your legal every day. Environmental, be aware of environmental management. Even though your supplier spills the oil, it still has a responsibility that may not be your responsibility, but if he is closed down tomorrow because of an environmental issue, you cannot get any product from your supplier. Be aware of how they handle their environmental issues, health issues, safety issues, etc. Okay, they are all important for the external stuff, particularly safety issues in a supplier. So that's all internal shit. All other than when you can involve the supplier. When you talk external, again, you're talking supplier management. You are the face to the organization of a supply base. You are the face, the primary contact to the supplier, but not the only contact. In fact, the text says you should be the only one. And I disagree with that entirely. You cannot be the only one, other than you should be the only one with conversations on purchase orders and contracts. That's different. But quality people need to talk to the supplier quality people. Engineers have to talk to the supplier engineers. It is okay for them to do that. You just want to build a strong relationship internally so that they will keep you involved in the discussion, either through just a brief update or, by the way, Jim, I talked to the supplier about this. I think we've got a bit of an issue. Can we fix it? It's important that, again, the cross-functional activities, whether it be in a formal team or not, still happens in a company. Okay? I do not talk engineering with a supplier. It is not my domain. I do not talk quality with a supplier, meaning fixing a quality or a better way to make quality or changing quality standards. That is the quality department's job. So there is always other people talking to your supplier, and you should be sharing that internally. Okay, you are the primary liaison for materials, for new technology, for marketing, service, etc., etc. They are a liaison for multiple. This is a supplier to you, or liaison on materials and new technology. They will come to you and say, here's a new way to do this. Here's a new material that can do the same job as you're asking this to do for 10% less. They'll come to you with a new processing idea, if you have a good relationship. Your external linkages are suppliers, government and local communities. Again, when you go back to I'm now taking back inside Blackboard, company documents. You should see on your screen the course documents for supply management, chapter 4 supply management. There's 2 documents there that I've added called integration linkages. That is actually exhibit 4.1 in your text, and it looks something like it should load. And let me just load it up for you. You should be able to see that document. You can see exhibit 4.1. It shows what the linkages are, shows what the activities are, back and forth in there. And if you don't see it, can you tell me that? Can you see a big X on your screen? Somebody answer me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need, because that document is in your text. You need to understand that this is how linkages are connected. If you look at purchasing operations, all of them there, legal, marketing, suppliers, there's the things that happen to them. Do not memorize this, but have a good understanding that linkages to outside and internal and external people are very, very important, and they're complex, and there's a ton of information that's going back and forth. Purchasing may be in the middle for the purpose here because it's a purchasing course. All this does not imply that everything has to go through purchasing. It just means that you have a connectivity with multiple people at all times. Okay? All right, the second document that, so let me close this. So that's there, and the second one I put is another exhibit in your textbook that if you don't have a textbook you will need. That's not in your slides. And it talks about buyer-seller relationships from a traditional viewpoint. You should see it says exhibit 4.2, and it talks about the old style versus the new style. So if I take the first line, suppliers cost sharing, for example, suppliers have multiple sources to play off against each other versus one or a few preferred suppliers. Okay, by cost sharing, the traditional approach is buyer takes all the savings, the supplier hides the savings so he can't take it. In the collaborative world is a win-win shared reward system. So that's, again, helps you understand the difference between traditional and collaborative. Collaborative and contemporary are sometimes synonymous words. Okay, so both those documents are attached. They're not in your PowerPoints, but you should be able to use them there. Again, they're for your benefit. Okay, let me go back to PowerPoint. Don't know if that happened or not. Okay, you should have the PowerPoint back up again. Suppliers, you have a primarily commercial linkage. The PowerPoint is off. Can anyone see PowerPoint? Oh shit, hold on. PowerPoint should be on. Okay. Again, as a primary commercial linkage, they must keep open, continuous communication. You need to build this relationship so your supplier can trust you and is not afraid when you call to say, I need to talk to you. Okay. You want them to talk to you. They want you to be open. They want you to be welcome in their plant. They want them to be collaborative to you. Okay, and you can assist your company by making the supplier selection and management. You want your suppliers to be the best suppliers you can. Government, there's some internal trade issues. Again, your legal department deals with government most of the time. Purchasing does not deal with government. Local communities, we do not deal with local communities either, very much. Again, your company will, your company communication staff will, but purchasing doesn't. Buyer supplier collaboration, very important. Limited number of suppliers, Honda 900 versus GM 65,000, a big difference here. You want to create a win-win approach, and you want to give them benefit of joint effort in supplier performance.
Sorry, I can't see the whole PowerPoint.
What can you see?
I can see like the top right, top left. It's like not the whole thing.
Does anybody else have that issue?
No.
Okay, I think then, Saman, it must be something you're doing because you should be able to see the full screen.
All right, I'll try to leave and come back.
Yep, yeah, change it and come back in. Just even switch to a different application and come on back in again. It may refresh itself.
Just move your cursor to the middle of the screen.
Say that again.
Just move the cursor to the middle of the screen.
That makes some sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully he will try that. See what happens. Okay, everybody still had the PowerPoint on it. So, open exchange of information. Don't lie to your supplier. Credible commitment to work together means don't tell them you're going to work together if you're not going to. People don't like liars. They don't like false expectations. If I say I'm going to work with you, then I need to find a way to work with them. Okay, I think it's important that you do that. I think you need to have your supplier make that commitment to high quality, defect-free parts based on the standard that you as a customer have given them. You can't ask them to do more than the standard unless you make that your standard. Because in some cases, the more you ask a supplier to do to make better quality, may actually cost you more money. And if it's part of the normal process, that's okay. But if you ask them to check every part, for example, every part physically, do 100% gauging, that's not normal. It's not acceptable. You should only have to do a gauge check every 30 minutes or every hour in the process. As long as it's still, if you check a part on a gauge, an attribute gauge at 10 a.m. and everything is good, and you check it at 10:30 and everything is good, you're assuming everything in between is good also. That's the way it works. But if you suddenly change and do a part at 11 o'clock and it's wrong, it was good at 10, it was good at 10:30, but now at 11 o'clock it's failed, then you have to go back and find out in the last half hour what went wrong and is there any other parts there. So that's an inspection that you do. And again, it's a quality discussion that you can get to. Okay. Some advantages to closer relationships. Trust is huge. Do not take advantage of each other. That is not a trust. Trust is, I asked you to do something, you do it for me, I trust you did it properly, you asked me to do something, I did it for you, etc. Those are trustworthy things. I asked you to maintain confidential information, you need to do that. Okay. When you trust someone, then you don't, and you have a strong relationship, you don't take advantage of each other. You share certain sensitive information, but not all sensitive information. For example, if you're a private company, you're not going to share your profit levels with your supplier. If I made 50% profit on their business and they make 5% profit on mine, that's probably not a fair thing. So you usually don't share profits. But if you're a public company, your profits are already known. It's public information. If you trust a supplier, then you involve them early in the discussion in the development cycle, even before you source in with the business. My preferred supplier is company A. I bring him in to help develop the process. It gives him the inside track, and it does give him an inside track on sourcing, but that's why he's a preferred supplier. That's why he's part of your supply base. Okay, you actually want to give your best supplier the best part, and so you want their involvement in it. But there's no guarantee there, but you shouldn't take advantage of them if you don't intend to do it. Long-term contracts. Important long-term contracts. The longer term a contract you can give someone, and again, remember in purchasing there's not a lot of contracts, but your customer, Ford, will give the supplier a contract, and the contract is not got a term on it, and it doesn't have a volume on it. It just says I'm buying this part from you as long as I need it, providing you meet all the quality standards, the delivery standards, etc., etc., etc. All right, but if you want your supplier to invest in new equipment, in new plants, in higher technology, you need to be able to give them a commitment to long-term business. You can't ask a supplier to make a significant investment in your business if you don't intend to work with them 6 months from now. That's very important for us to understand. Okay? And again, long-term contracts might involve the joint development of new technology, some risk sharing, and improvement of the supplier's capability, which says the supplier would like to do something, some new technology for you, but really can't afford it personally on his bank account. You know, he just doesn't have that type of money. He will come to you as a customer and say, there's an opportunity here that I'd like you to consider, and I'd like it to be a joint activity because I really can't afford to do this, but I'm giving you this information so that you might be able to benefit from it. That's okay. Many times you have joint activity with a supplier and the customer pays half of it, but usually the result of that is you'll only use this technology for me, not for anybody else. So sometimes we will do joint development capability with a new technology development with suppliers, but it's usually puts a caveat in there that says that they sign agreement says they will only use this technology for you and you only, and definitely not to your competition. No company wants to give their competition an advantage. And if I do all the investment and he gets the advantage, becomes a thing. So there's some obstacles to closer relationships. Confidentiality is the biggest one. You say we're going to be confidential with each other. I'm going to share confidential information with you. Most people don't believe you, and it takes time to prove that you can. And even in a company presidents have confidential information that they share with their senior management, or they share with their staff administrator who looks after the president CEO. And in most cases, the rumor of that same discussion is on the plant floor 4 hours later because the secretary says to someone else, don't tell them I told you this, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to buy IBM. And before you know it, there's a rumor swirling that you're going to buy IBM. Because the president's told 5 people, he doesn't know who it was, doesn't know how it got out there, but the rumor gets out there quickly. So be always cautious. Pricing is confidential to the supplier only. Do not share that with anybody else. Inside your company, they can see the PO price, they can see the different things, but you know, you need to make sure you limit what the supplier sees, but if it makes his job better or it can help him do a better job, you want to share the information. There's legal barriers or antitrust. You've got to be very careful with antitrust, and I won't get into antitrust here because it is a complex subject, but if you get into an antitrust trial, you've got a significant issue in your hands. So you're trying to make sure, and that's why you might include your lawyers to look at contracts and final things. You just want to make sure you're not doing something wrong. Okay, and resistance to change. Most people, as much as they say they're open-minded, most people don't like change. We like the consistency of knowing what we're doing every day. We like to be able to know the day is predictable and your job is predictable. Many people struggle as soon as you start to make change because they find it difficult to make the adjustments. Eventually they'll go there. But that top 20% of your company, I said, are leaders and they excel in their job. They are usually not resistant to change. In fact, they are the change agents. The bottom 10% who are low-hanging fruit are non-value added people where they're not giving value back for their job. First of all, they'll be lucky to keep their job. They should be the first person to leave a company by firing or termination. But they are also so resistant to change that they don't want to change. But I will give you a tip for your future career. Attitude, at least in the companies I've been involved with, when someone is terminated, there's the odd time they've done something really wrong and they get terminated. That's clearly understandable. But in Algoma, we've probably downsized in the last 5 years. There's probably been 10 people left the organization, and they were 10%. Those 10 people came from the bottom echelon of the company. They were non-performing. They spent most of the time chit-chatting at the coffee machine, blah, 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 blah. Eventually, those people lost their jobs, and they lost it because of attitude, that they would go through the day and do half a day of value-added activity and half a day of socializing, looking at social media on the internet, looking for shopping on the internet. Attitude is which cost people their jobs, not necessarily poor performance. Okay, so keep in mind, always do your job. Your company's paying you to do the job. Make sure you do it and do it well. If you want to do it, you've got coffee breaks and lunch times and after hours. You can go on the internet and do different things. But I had to fire a physically challenged person in the company I was a senior executive with. He was a treasurer, the controller, viable member of the team, and he had a bad habit of watching the Ohio State Buckeyes website constantly throughout the day. And the way his table was situated, everyone that came in the office from the plant walked in to get something, left again. They had to pass his desk, and everybody seen that Joe spent more time reading the Ohio State Buckeyes website than he did working. And eventually it terminated him because he wouldn't fix it and wouldn't change it and he wouldn't do what was necessary. Okay, so some cases termination is not a good thing, but there's usually a reason for it. But I want you to work hard at maintaining your relationships and work hard at doing your job, because it's important. I want you to be part of the top 20%, not the bottom 20%. And I'll actually give you some additional documents that show the concept of triangles and why a triangle is so important, because it does depict suppliers, it does depict company capability, it does depict many things. Okay, I'll give that to you later. We're running out. We're coming up in the last few minutes. You can read about big R and little r. Just read it. I won't question you on it. I don't. Yeah, little r, big R. Yeah, relationships are important, but I'm not going to talk about that part. Effective supplier relation management. You know. Again, read it. Don't get hung up on SRM skills. Read through this. Maybe we'll stop here. Let's stop here at this relationship management, because I wanted to say what to tell you and what not to tell you here. It's important that you maintain relationships. Yes, it's important that you have a management style to do that. It's important that you get what you want to get. But let's see what happens. Okay, let me go. Let's stop the lecture there. Don't leave yet, but let's go back into Outlook. I mean, not Outlook. Into your course information. Is there any questions on what's required? You got your quizzes due tonight, okay? And some people answered that, and I apologize. I said it was coming in an email. I did send it out to you by email last night. I thought I did that, but I just posted it. So please take the time to do that. Results so far, it seems to be an easy quiz. There's good results. Again, take the time to do it. I would prefer you do your quizzes, and it's up to you. Only you know whether you're sitting with an open book and taking 30 minutes to do it versus 15 minutes. But if you're always going to use the book for get your answers, it tells you don't understand the material. And on a midterm, there will be 20 multiple choice questions that you don't have an open book for. Okay, so it's important that you try to do your quizzes without the book unless you need it. Okay, but if you need it for everything, you don't know your stuff. You do need to read this chapter. Please read chapter 4 for chapter 3 in the abbreviated version, chapter 4 in the full version. It is important that you understand this chapter. It is important that you spend time reading this. Okay. Just so you know, I did manage to record the second half of the last subject, chapter 2, on the Saturday morning. Again, before I changed to the microphone, so that the volume is quite low on it, I can't help that, but it is there. And the other thing I've noticed is sometimes when you open up a video, there's nothing for the first 1, 2, 3 minutes sometimes, because as soon as I log into a meeting, it actually starts recording. So there's nothing happening in that first 5 minutes as I wait till people come in class. So sometimes just drag the little blue button at the bottom, just drag it forward, a little bit until you start to see pictures and people on there, and then there'll be voice. Okay, and I do think that the microphone is better. Hopefully it's better for you. I've heard good comments about that, and I'll try and also start to post some independent discussions with you also. Any questions, please don't hesitate to ask inside the questions blog. Do that for me. Secondly, if you need one-on-one time with me, just send me an email that you would like to have a chance to talk to me one-on-one. That's okay, I'll make time for you. I would prefer it to be in the morning 9 to 10, but if that's not possible, we'll find another time. That is what I call my virtual office hours. We can do that. Let me just see if there's anything else.
Sir, will we have an exam review next week?
Yes, you will. Absolutely. Thank you very much for asking that question. We will have an exam review, and I'll go through that again, and I'll highlight not what's going to be on the exam, but where the areas of interest are. Okay? And I'm not going to give you everything. It says here you need to read everything. You can't read everything, and you can't absorb everything, and you can't prepare everything for an exam. I'll tell you where my areas of interest are. Okay?
Thank you.
You will see that. Okay. Oh, by the way, I have an apology to make for you. While I was trying to clean up some documentation inside Blackboard, I inadvertently deleted the traditional versus contemporary discussion board. I don't know how it happened. It just disappeared, and poof. And it says, it gave me the warning. It can't be recovered. And I pressed the button anyway, so my apology. The second discussion board is out there, plus the mini assignment. And then the second half of that, there's a third discussion board which is separated, because it's the concept is when you go to visit a plant tour, as you did Amazon, you'll be able to look at things and say, why do they do that? I think there's a better way to do that, and a good example would be, there was a conversation with Izzy and Hamza and a couple of other people when we looked at the conveyor that was the main conveyor belt that was going down to the trucks, and there was labels stuck on the conveyor belt which says those labels came off of a box, and therefore how did they get off and why are they on the conveyor belt, which means they must have been missing when it went into the truck. So there's some opportunities that you can see, and what is unique when you go to visit a plant is that if we can come back with a couple of ideas of observations that we've seen and send them back to Amazon through Mary's contacts and say, thank you very much for the tour. While we were there, several of our students saw some opportunity that might be worth looking at. It's a polite way of saying we saw something that maybe can be improved. I do a lecture with the University of Toronto and Magna International's Masters of Engineers, talking about creative thinking and innovation, and part of what they have to do is come up with an idea on how to improve the company. You're no different. When you may have seen something inside Amazon that you think can be improved, So send it to me and we'll collect them all together, and then we'll send a document with your name on it that says, Joe Blow, Izzy, Saman, and they thought this idea up and it may be worth looking. And the idea will be, you give them the idea, you give them the details, and then you give them your contact information, and you give them a resume, at least a link to a resume, so that you may be able to find. And I've had 2 or 3 students make good comments on physical comments at a plant tour, and they are working for that company now and doing very well. So it could be an opportunity. Again, it's volunteer, there's no marks on it, because not everyone can come up with a fresh idea, not everyone can see the opportunity, and the people who weren't there sure as hell can't tell me how to improve it if they weren't there. So see what you can do. It's the first time I've tried it. I'd like us to think that we can add value back to someone who lets us into the plant, and see what you can do.
Sir,
Okay. Yes.
a quick question for the Amazon supply chain assignment that we
Yes.
have. Just wanted to ask if do we have to make like a diagram and then explain like each part of the supply chain, or we just need to make the diagram?
That's a very good question. You don't need to explain the supply chain. The purpose of a diagram, supply chain diagram, is it should be self-explanatory. Okay?
Right. Okay, sounds
So
good.
when you go back and look at the process flow chart for supply chain management, for example, there was things in there that was easy. If you follow the arrows, if you can follow an arrow, you can read the next one. So again,
Right.
the example in chapter 2 is the cereal box, the cereal manufacturer. There's no explanation on there. It tells you what to do, what they're sending, blah blah blah. It's pretty easy to read it, and your supply chain diagram should be pretty easy to read.
And we just email you the document, yeah?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sounds good.
And
Thank
again,
you.
use whatever format makes sense. Some people are higher skilled than others, and some people will do an Excel document. Some people will do a Word document. Whatever you're comfortable with, you can use. I reference the software Visio. Visio is, of course, a flow charting software. Some people have that, some people know it and use it. Whatever format you use is okay. I hesitate to say you can even hand draw it out and send it to me, but I don't want you to do that, because if you cannot build a flowchart in Excel or in Word, there's something wrong with your computer skills, and you should recognize that now. So I don't want you to hand draw it. You may hand draw it initially and then electronically duplicate that, but you can do it in either Word, Excel, PowerPoint, whatever you want. You can, as long as it's readable. It does not need to have reams of information with it. It's just what you think your image is of their supply chain. So you have to think about it, because I don't know what it is. And when I mark it, I'll mark it based on the depth of you went, how detailed you went, how much thought you put into it. What's the format look like? Is it understandable? Can I see the flow? And again, the simple example given to you in the textbook has got information on it that you should look at, because it's important information. But it's fairly simple in how it is. You don't have to lose a lot of sleep on this, but you do have to think about it. Okay? And I think if you're at the Amazon plant tour, there was the tour guide gave us lots of good little piece of information that might be able to put into that flow chart. And again, I won't tell you what it is, because I heard them, and if I heard them with my ears, and you heard them with your ears too, unless you weren't there. Okay? So it's important you do that, and to make sure that you get it to me on time. I think it's Sunday at 5 o'clock for your discussion board. And again, don't leave your discussion board to the last minute. The more activity you can put in early enough, the more people you can get to add to your existing stream, helps your marks and helps their marks. So an example of that is, I'll give you a mark for your initial contribution, then I'll give you a mark then I'll give students the mark for commenting on yours and adding to it. But you also get the same mark, because and I think Taz had the best, the most in the last discussion, and I think there were 6 or 8 points going back and forth. the fact that there was that back and forth, it makes his stream very well thought out and a lot of activity. So he, I think, picked up the 10 marks because he had 4 or 5 different people add to it. Now the 4 or 5 people added to it, they get marks for it too. So they get the marks for their own comment and they get marks for making their comments on his. So I will try to find marks to give you by your activity. So the person who doesn't make a comment on anybody else's, you just shortchange yourself by half your marks, essentially. Okay? So work at it, build it up, spend time going back and forth, and again I use the example of your social media. If you're willing to do it on Instagram and Facebook and the likes of that every day for 3 hours, you sure as hell can do it in this class back and forth with the classmates. Okay? Any other questions? When it says no, I'm assuming that not.
Oh, sorry, one question, sir.
Yep.
What format is the midterm?
What format? The midterm, we'll cover that next week and we do the review, but it will be a section on multiple choice. There'll be a section on 2 or 3 short 5-point questions, and there will be 2 to 3 larger essay types so there'll be 1 point, say somewhere maybe 15 multiple choice, 1 mark each, multiple choice true or false. There'll be 2 to 3 short answer questions worth 5 points each, and there'll be 2 to 3 or 1 to 2, no, probably two long answers which are worth 10 points each. So about 40 marks. It will take an hour and a half, 90 minutes. It'll be in class. You should have no trouble with it. This is not difficult material.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. And you'll notice I'm trying to keep up to date with most of your marks as soon as I can get them in there. The idea is you should be able to see that. But at some point I may need to revamp how Grade Center is laid out. I'll see going forward what it looks like. If there's any doubt where you are or you're concerned, there should be nothing yet concerning anybody unless you didn't do them. But most people are scoring well. Again, this is the easy part of the program. This first half lecture, there's nothing other than this chapter that's earth-shattering. It will get more difficult as we go on because I'll assume that you know about cross-functional teams. I'll assume that you know about different things, and so it will get more aggressive as we go forward. But still, it's never aggressive because the way I've designed it is so it won't tax the students. It won't tax you, but you do have to contribute. And better you keep up to date with it, please. When you're running a catch up, it's very difficult to catch up, and once we start into the second half, you won't be able to catch up. Okay, so let's work at it. If you can, please, very much appreciate the 12 students today, but 12 out of 20 is not a lot, so there's a lot missing. I do appreciate it, and we'll go from there. Just before you all log off, give me 2 seconds just to make sure I've got everybody listed. Before, because I need to. Okay, I've got everybody's attendance, just so I know. I don't keep attendance, but Mary's always asking how many people are online. Okay, improvements, things that we can help improve on. Don't be afraid to send them back. I don't take offense to them. I know I slur and go on from there, but let's try and continue to make this better. Hopefully this lecture will post properly, and we'll go from there. All right, don't be afraid to contact me if you need anything. Thank you very much for your participation, and I'll receive your quiz tonight, and we'll receive your discussion board the latest by Sunday, and go from there. Thank you.